how does it really feel when you're trying to be in your child's life, but the other party is just making it difficult?
It's hard. It's hard because one, I feel like we're fighting a stereotype that's not even true, first of all. And when you're willing and you have the other party that's pretty much creating resistance, and I think that's who gets the most resistance. It's the good fathers that actually want to be in their kids' lives.
Welcome, real ones. This is Henry Fernandez podcast. This is your host, Henry Fernandez. If this is your first time joining us today, welcome to the family. I am so glad that you're in tune with us. We're just really going to have a good time today. I'm going to encourage you, make your comments, let us know what you're thinking, if what we're saying is making sense to you, and most importantly, I'm asking you to support this podcast. We can't do this without your help. So I'm going to encourage you to go to my website, henryfernandez.org, and make a donation today and let us know that we need to keep doing what we are called to do. Well, joining me on the podcast today are my co-host, Christopher Maddox, and my two guests, Simeon Stevens and Glenn Giles. Now, we're going to be talking about changing the narrative of Black fathers. This is a really interesting topic. So, gentlemen, welcome to the podcast. And Chris, good to be beside you again.
Yeah, man.
So I want to read this because this really got me.
Okay.
Mm-hmm.
In 2013, the CDC exposed the truth about Black fathers in America, stating that 2.5 million Black fathers live in a household with their children compared with 1.7 million who don't. When I read that, Chris, it blew my mind that we have been listening to a narrative for years that's a lie.
Absolutely.
You know, and to know that, especially men of color, that we've been battered for years, saying that we're absentee fathers in the home, and that's shocking. And
yes.
I have, you, including yourself, Chris, and I have these gentlemen here who have history of showing that they're among the 2.5 million.
Yes.
You know, you a father to you to your stepchild.
Yes, sir.
Married your beautiful wife, and nobody would know that that's your stepchild.
No, and I go out of my way to make that the case because he's my kid. We're in the house together. I have an impact on how he grows up. I have a role to play in influencing him. Mm-hmm. And so I wouldn't dare treat him like he's just a third roommate, you know?
Right.
No, he's mine. And I'm glad that he's mine.
Where did that come from? What made you, because there's a lot of Black men listening, and I want them to understand, do not believe the lie.
Yes.
The negative narratives that says Black men are not doing their part. No matter what situation life placed you in, a lot of us are doing our job,
absolutely,
including you, because, you know, here it is, you were married before, you found, your beautiful wife, and she brought into the marriage a son.
Absolutely.
You didn't hesitate. You didn't think that's another man's responsibility. Where did that come from?
Well, two things. First, it came from the fact I grew up in the 90s. I'm an 80s baby, came of age in the 90s. And in the 90s, if you all remember, we had Cliff Huxtable, Bill Cosby.
Yes.
He was the Black father on television.
Yeah.
And also during the 90s, there was this whole thing going on. I'm going to make this super short. If you remember the welfare queen.
Right.
Remember there was a whole move by the conservatives in the country to kind of cut what we were spending on welfare. And so they produced this image of the Black woman as being a welfare queen. She's just living off the government. Well, the only way that image could stand is if conversely you had she's by herself. She's a welfare queen because she ain't got no man.
Right.
Now, I'm growing up in my neighborhood and I'm involved. And every time I'm going to my football games, it's dads all in the stands. Every time I'm going to my rec basketball games, it's dads all in the stands. Now, my parents had divorced, and so I was looking at other kids like, oh, man, his dad is here.
Right.
And I'm looking around for my older brother to show up late. You know what I'm saying? So I made up my mind then, like, okay, yo, when I am in the position to be a father,
That's good.
I'm going to be a father.
Wow.
And I think a lot of people who might be in my same age group and generation, we grew up hearing that.
Right.
Oh, black dudes don't take care of their kids. They not in the house. And I know many of people in my peer group made a decision to be like, nah, that's not going to be me.
Right.
And then the other part of that is I went out of my way. Bishop, you know, I get a little loose with my lips on this podcast. I went out of my way.
Jesus, save him.
I went out of my way not to have children early. If I do say so myself, I have a PhD in pullout. I don't know if y'all.
Lord, save him, Jesus.
Wow.
Save him, Lord.
With my master's.
I studied
Save him,
it. I wrote a
Jesus.
dissertation.
Rewind. What did you say?
I had to.
We don't want to hear it again. We do not want to hear it again.
I had to defend that dissertation. But what ends up happening is I'm so adept, right?
Good.
That I didn't have any kids. Right. So then I'm older, and then now, so when I meet Tia, my wife, and she has a son, I wanted to be a father for a very, very, very long time. It's almost, to me, I looked at it like God saying,
Right.
you go.
Right. But I commend you though, because like I said, one would think it's not your child, it's not your responsibility, and I have stood from a distance and watched how no one could tell that that's not your son. So, Stephen, let's get to you, because I want the viewers, the real ones, to kind of know the backdrop to your story. You've been married before.
Yes, I was married before.
Right, and how many kids you've got?
I have one. I'm a single father to a beautiful 11-year-old daughter
And you've been in your child's life,
the whole time,
no matter what the circumstances.
no matter the circumstances.
And we're going to talk about it a little bit. What about you, Glenn?
Well, I'm married 13 years. I have 3 beautiful children. One before my wife now. That one, we'll get to the later questions that'll deal with that. But yes, I've done everything to stay in her life, but she took a different path, but I'll just consider her the prodigal daughter for now.
Okay. All right, great. So let's go into the first question here. Do you feel that black fathers, based on the stats I just gave, are portrayed correctly in the media? Because the media somehow have crafted this narrative, especially for men of color,
Right.
that were absent from the home. And the report really kind of refute that.
Right.
That's not true. Is there a motive behind that?
I mean, I think so. I feel like because the black community, the black father has so much influence that the only way to throw people off is to make them not appear as powerful as they are. Like, and just to give you a quick little thing. So like for me, for example, like some people feel like the presence of a father being present in the house is important. Though that can be true, I think it's more so about the presence, right? Meaning like, even if the father is not physically in the house, whether it's because of divorce or whatever the situation may be, if he still has access to that child and has that child's ear, he can still have an influence. And that's why I think in most cases when there are separations, the woman does everything to like take the child completely so that the father won't have any influence.
Or use the child as a bait to get back at the man.
Right.
So let's talk about this a little bit, because this, you just said something, Glenn, that's really true. That life happens. You date a girl, it may not have worked out, but it produced a child.
Right.
And it doesn't mean that just because you're not with the woman, you're not present at her house with the child, it doesn't mean that you're an absentee father.
Exactly.
Right, and I can chime in on that. When my parents got divorced, my mom ended up taking my brother and I to a whole different country. So although my father wasn't physically present, he was very much present. Back then it was Skype. We had an app called Uvo, texting. He was getting pictures after the basketball games. He was very present. So like little issues that I would have, I mean, he would send money, buy clothes. So yes, we didn't have that physical bond. There are some things I feel like I missed out, but I never felt abandoned.
Right.
He was always there.
Right. So I want the fathers who are out there, maybe you're in a situation like Stephen, right? You're not with that woman anymore, maybe through divorce or a breakup, you were dating her, and you have a child or children, right? Don't let people make you feel that you have abandoned your children, especially like Stephen's dad, living in another country. Maybe your job, maybe you're a pilot, maybe you're an engineer, or maybe the mother is toxic. I mean, let's just,
We'll get on that later.
and I didn't, please, before you start typing stuff, I didn't say all the women are toxic.
Not all of them.
But in a situation where a woman can be very toxic, because, women are very emotional. They're hurt because you left them or it didn't work out, all that kind of a stuff. And they use the children as baits, to get back at you. But I want to really congratulate you and really honor you, men, that are out there that are standing up. Even if you're not physically in the home, you are supporting. You're sending your money, you're taking the kids out when you can and so forth. You don't fall into that category that the media is putting out there, black fathers are missing from their homes and so forth. So it's what it is. Now, let me dive a little bit more into the conversation here, because let me even ask you guys, how does it really feel when you're trying to be in your child's life, but the other party is just making it difficult?
It's
You want to go first?
No, it's hard. It's hard because one, I feel like we're fighting a stereotype that's not even true, first of all. And when you're willing and you have the other party that's pretty much creating resistance, and I think that's who gets the most resistance. It's the good fathers that actually want to be in their kids' lives, right? And we're fighting a stereotype, like I said, another party, and of course a system that's set up for us not to be there.
Right. Yeah, a system with child support, the court system.
I'm glad you said child support. So just an example, I was on child support while my daughter was living with me, right?
You were paying the mother.
No, I wasn't paying.
Okay.
I was not paying.
Okay.
He said,
made
get
sure
that
I
part
wasn't
right.
paying, yeah.
Okay.
But that's because my daughter was living with me.
Okay.
So her mother, she's facing some challenges, but she would call in and put me on child support. And all they would need is word of mouth, right? I would just get a notice. My license would get suspended.
All because she said something. No proof.
No proof.
And all the while, your daughter is living with you.
Yes, and I'm taking care of her by myself, right? I mean, with help, with friends and everything. But I was told that the burden of proof is upon me. So I have to prove that she's lying, right? It got to a point where all my bank accounts were frozen in order to collect child support, right? And I was telling these people like, hey, I don't even know where her mother is at the moment, right? So by you freezing my accounts and moving this money to wherever, you're not actually supporting the child. But the response always goes back to, sir, the system, we don't have anything to do with that. So I had to fight hard, even to the point where I stopped paying lawyers and started representing myself. I had to watch YouTube videos, read, and just by the grace of God, but eventually everything got zeroed out.
Amen.
So I have full custody and I don't owe anything.
Thank God for that.
Well, Glenn.
Well, my story is totally opposite of his, because I end up having to do like $16,600 back pay. And my situation was a little different. We separated. I was always financially there for my daughter, but I never used to give money orders. So once I had got into a new relationship, the girl was like, hey, I'm a woman, so I know how this works. So what you should do is start giving money orders. Once I gave her that first money order, she became Satan herself. I don't know what about the money order she didn't like, but she wanted the cash, you know what I mean? So then she just took a different turn. She went and even manipulated us to believe that when my wife got pregnant with our second child, she called my wife and she was like, hey, I know you guys got another child. Finances might be tough. So like to make it easier on you guys just get her back to school clothes, get her book bag, stuff like that. And we'll split the field trips. And we're like, oh, she turned over a new leaf. But what ended up happening is in the state of Florida, when they go in for back pay, it only looks at the last 2 years. And she knew somebody that worked in the child support system. We didn't know that, so she minimized our spending. So then when it came time to go to court to show
Now
all
it
the
looks
proof,
like,
I had receipts from 2010. And the court was like, we only need the last 2 years. And I'm like, oh, okay, I got that, but I have this, like, we don't need any of that. And most of everything I submitted was considered gifts. So I end up...
Because you did not tag it to child support.
So I end up having to pay her $16,600 in back pay and $545 a month, all because she was upset because we were no longer together. Now, she made her mom come and lie on the stand and said that my daughter lived with her for 4 months when my daughter lived with her for 13 years.
Right.
And she had to give up her parent guardianship to the grandma.
Right.
But it's the same thing as him.
Yeah.
It was like I would have, it was on me to prove
Right.
that.
Right, but what would you say to women? Because I could see women are watching this podcast now, and they're like, "You guys lying?
No.
You come and you drop your seed, and you won't take care of your children, and I'm sick and tired of
You didn't get your PhD in pull out.
Listen, Bishop, I had proof, bank statements laid out,
Yeah.
showing the transfers, and like he said,
They don't care.
because I did not label it as child support, I was told, "Sir, that's considered a gift, every last penny."
Yeah.
So then, how do you all feel then? Because that's such a I can't even imagine the amount of anger that would.
I was angry.
Yeah, I
Oh,
understand.
yeah, 100%.
So how do you all feeling when you see in the larger culture this portrayal of men like yourselves? Because somebody will look at the fact that on some chart somewhere y'all are statistics,
Right.
Men who owe money or whatever, and they'll
I'm
lump
zeroed
you
out too,
guys-
sir.
Oh, one time for the zero out.
But I paid it, though. I had to pay it, though.
I feel you.
Yeah.
Oh wow, excellent job with
Yeah.
that. That's almost like paying off a credit card. or
Right,
something.
right.
But they still, somebody will have y'all on a page somewhere,
Right.
and say, "Hey, look, black fathers don't take care of their kids, or black fathers are more apt to leave." When you see that larger message being put out into the culture, how do you feel about that?
Like I said, I was angry, but I just had to keep doing it, right? I just had to keep being a father. No matter what the media said or what people said, I had to wake up every day. I had a daughter. With her being a little girl, everything revolved around food, right? So I had to feed her, clothe her, right? I had help with the hair because I struggled with that. I think a lot of us gonna struggle with that.
That's a good thing.
But honestly, I just put all that behind me and just did everything that I had to do, even when sometimes it inconvenienced me, right? But it was a bigger picture.
Right.
Like I would do anything for her. I know people that say I'll die for this person, but I was willing to live for my daughter.
Straight up.
Let me ask you this, Stephen. So during the time, of course, the relationship didn't work. She's fighting you, and
Right.
you're going through all of that. You're trying to take care of your daughter. You're trying to support her. Were there any time during that process you were resentful towards women, skeptical? How did it affect you dating? I mean,
It
were you
did.
scared or what?
I was scared. I wasn't resentful towards women, but I went in with the mindset that I didn't want to have another child. Not saying all women would be like that, but I did not want to find out.
Well, I can chime in on that. So for me,
Say he didn't want to find out.
it pissed me off too, because nobody sees what happened behind closed doors, right?
Right.
So I don't. My dad's a pastor, so my dad don't play that tattoos and all that. So I only have one tattoo, and the one tattoo I have is my daughter's name. So it was a period when we had first, I guess, the drifting started happening. I would be in the shower, and every time I went to go, scrub my arm, it was a reminder that she wasn't there, and I would be in tears. So you can have this thought that black men don't care and all that, but nobody knows about the times I'm going to the
Yeah.
kitchen and crying about the situation, praying to God about it, and it did make me angry. But what it did do for me, and I praise God for it, is it made me realize I would never date a Spanish woman again, because she would.
Glenn,
Let me put a disclaimer there. There's nothing wrong
I didn't say nothing.
with Spanish ladies.
That's what it did to me.
Okay.
Glenn's
it did
opinions
traumatize
are
me.
his own. They are
It did
not
traumatize me.
Traumatized you.
Yeah, it did.
No more Spanish.
I'm like, where you from? That's a first date question right there.
Oh, man.
Man, I tell you what. Let me ask you this question then. Parenting,
Right.
you still have your daughter.
Yes.
With you, right?
Yes.
For men out there, and even women, because I know there's some women who are single. How difficult it is for you as a single father, knowing that, man, you got a daughter, and you have to do this without a woman.
Right. It's hard, but I think I had great help. God blessed me with a great group of friends who had great wives that would step in a lot of times, like I said, with hair and certain questions that I didn't have the answers to, right? But when it comes to, it affected how I did date after I was married, and that situation didn't work out. But it affected how I approach dating, right? Because there were times I was a little reserved, meaning like, would someone want to take on like a single father or a daughter, right? But I was very forefront about that.
Right.
Like within the first date, first conversation,
I have a
you're
daughter.
know I have a daughter.
Right.
So it's either gonna push you away or draw you in closer.
What was the response? Because I'm sure when you say, hello, I have a daughter,
Right.
they're like, yeah, so what? Everybody got a daughter.
Right.
But you like, nah, she in the house right now.
Yes, yes, with me. It was a shock. It was a shock. It would always be a shock. So even like, let's say I'm out with my daughter, right, just hanging out on a date, people would be like, oh, that's your daughter? Oh, she's so cute. Oh, you get to spend some time with daddy today? It's almost like,
You're like, no, this is an eternal daddy.
right.
figure,
Yeah,
like-
right? So even situations like that, when I would say I have a daughter, right, I'm a single father, she lives with me. Oh, really? So it's a shock. In a sense, it was like a conversation starter because we would go into it, but the response would 99% be a shock.
So let me tell you the truth. You probably gonna be like, Chris, you're such a jerk. But I was I was thinking to myself as you were talking, like, if there's ever a time when like this, is there ever sympathy that comes from women? When you like, hey, I'm a single father, girl, and
but you know what?
it's hard out here on a brother, does
I
that
know
ever?
for me, and I could speak.
He dropped
You heard the voice? That was the Hot 105.
Very white. voice.
Nah.
Hey.
No, I never used that.
Oh,
So
okay.
for me, it always came after like the shock. It's almost like, oh, we feel bad for you, right? Pretty much,
Right.
I never led with. I think most single fathers don't like, hey, I'm a single father. They'll come up to conversation like we just do it.
Right.
Sometimes they might notice. Like I was asked if I was a single father because I had my daughter with 2 ponytails. And the thing was hanging down.
Them ponytails was giving single dad.
Yeah, pretty much. Yeah,
That level of frizz says.
stuff, but yeah, we don't just put that out there. We just do what we have to do.
But if a woman reads into that, she will understand that if you're willing to own up to your child
Right.
and say, that's my daughter, I'm a single dad, that should be signs to her that this guy is a good guy.
Yes, I have been told that is commendable.
And the narratives is that the child will always be with the mother.
Yeah.
Right? But
Right.
we're finding out in many cases,
Right.
fathers are actually the father and the mother,
Right.
and so forth.
Glenn, we're going to go into a different topic here in a second, but I wanted to ask you this question as kind of a way to transition into it. That first situation with your first child and the difficulty that presented, and now you're raising 2 children. Your little boy, by the way, I saw him the other day, and I was like, "Yo, did you take your fast test? My boy just took his."
Right.
He was like, "Yeah." He's like, "What your boy get?" I said, "He got a 4." He said, "I got a 5." I was like, "All right, little man." So, is there anything from that first situation that you learned that now in your current situation that you apply or that you find beneficial, even possibly?
So I would say this. So
Not Spanish.
she's not Spanish. She's the entire Caribbean. She's Bahamian, Jamaican, and Haitian. But listen, so like I would say my wife played a very pivotal role because even when you're doing right, because of the circumstances, there were times that I did feel like maybe I missed the mark. Like why would she do that, and why would she agree with her mom even if the proof wasn't there unless it was true? And my wife would always remind me, like, you're like, without saying it didn't count from her, I'm your husband and not your dad. You know what I mean? But then once I had my kids and to see how they cherish the ground that I walk on. Like anytime, there's times they'll say certain things to me now, I'd really just tear up and she'd be like, see, that's what I'm saying. You're a great father. And that helped me realize that all this time, I didn't do anything wrong. So like what I end up having to find out, like the Spirit had revealed to me that although I had forgiven everybody else, I hadn't forgiven my daughter.
Oh.
And once I let that go, the weight came off.
Wow.
So here was our second topic. How important is it for the fathers, especially black fathers, to be active and present in the home? A National Health Statistics Survey report conducted in 2013 by the U.S. Centers for Disease Control and Prevention found that 78% of black fathers were also more likely to eat meals with their children every day compared with white fathers and Hispanic fathers. And a higher percentage of black fathers took their children to or from activities every day compared with white fathers. Now, once again, these are statistics that are rebutting this image that is out there that black men are not present, are not active in their children's lives. And now all of us up here are in homes trying to raise children. So how would you answer that question? How important is it for black fathers to be active and present in the home? Now, we know every father isn't necessarily present, but there's that other word there, active.
Right.
So how do y'all view that? How do you see that?
Well, I think the father definitely has to be active. I mean, it's very important. I always say, without being biased because I'm a man, that a child is probably better off with a single dad than a single mom. And that's only because you got to consider that if that mother has to raise a boy that's going to become a man, there's just some things you just can't teach him. You can't. I mean, you can teach him love, you can teach him how to treat a woman, all that good stuff, but that alpha that he would need to have, she can't give him that. You know what I mean? So like the man being present, most of the time you have kids, their role models are usually males.
Yeah.
I mean, besides Serena, because she plays tennis. But in most cases, it's a male figure that you see as a role model. You know what I mean?
Yes.
So
Exactly.
you need that.
Right. And just like he said, it's important, right? Like I mentioned before, yes, my dad was present. He wasn't physically present. It's a lot of things that I missed out on, right? The self-esteem issues, right? I mean, I'm in therapy dealing with all of that now. I feel like I missed out on a lot of skills that he has, right?
Yeah.
He can fix anything with a paperclip. That's how I feel.
Yeah, MacGyver dad.
Right? Pretty much. But, my mom raised me. I think I get, I would say my charm from that, my gentleness from that, but it's a lot of things that I missed out on.
Right.
Even though, like, you see my stature, but I would make myself small in a lot of situations. And it was through therapy that I realized that I didn't really emulate that from my father because he wasn't there physically.
Right.
Right. That's why I make sure although I'm raising a little girl, I try to, give her that confidence, right? And model that and tell her like who she is and who she is.
Some of the qualities, biblical qualities and role of a father, when that father is missing, he may be provider, but it's just like you with your daughter right now. There's certain things you're going to do. You're going to provide.
Right.
You're going to, but mentor.
It's going to be different. It's going to be different.
It's going to be completely different.
Like my mom would tell me what type of girls not to deal with, but not how to deal with girls.
Straight up.
Who to approach.
Yeah.
I just had to wing
Figure it out.
Figure it out.
Yes,
And we see how that ended up.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Listen, I want to wrap it up with this, both of you, because I believe a lot of guys perhaps can relate to what you guys have gone through and currently dealing with. Let me start with you, Glenn, first. What would you say to guys who are now married, past relationship, produced children, and not a lot of women want to deal with their current husband,
Right.
dealing with drama. Because,
Right.
some ladies can make your life a living hell.
Even when they're not with you, yeah.
And so forth. What would you say to these men?
Honestly, it sounds pretty cliche, but the first thing would be you need therapy. Therapy is important. Fortunately, because my parents are still married, and I had that example in the house, even if I wanted to act on my emotion because of what I soaked in as a child, it's like I had no option. You know what I mean? I had no option but to still be there for my child because I never knew what it was to not be without either or. So I understood the importance of having both parents in the house. So if you're a person that's suffering from the last relationship, you gotta get healed of that, because you don't want, if you have a baby with the new person, you don't want the effects of that past relationship to trickle down to the new relationship.
That's why I asked the question, you know, because so many people are going to struggle in that area. If you can't find a way to shut that off,
Right.
do your responsibilities, right? But don't let that affect you. Now, you can have a problem in your current relationship, you know, where, you know, the other person is feeling as if they're getting the bitter end of the stick, and if they really love you, is why is she doing that? Why are you going through that, and so forth? So that's the reason why I ask you. So Stephen, for you guys who are, you know, really trying their best to do good, raising their children, whether the child is with them or not, what would you say to those guys who just feel like, man, this is a lot?
It's gonna feel like a lot. It's gonna feel like a lot because it's a great responsibility, right? But I would always tell myself, if not me, then who else? Right? So you have to do it, right? It's gonna be hard. No one's coming. No one's coming.
Nobody's coming.
Yeah, no one's coming.
like
Yes,
that.
you're
No one's
gonna,
That's real,
you're gonna
boy.
get some help, right? I have great friends, like I said, that would help me even at an inconvenience. But at the end of the day, no one's coming. right?
Yeah.
I just couldn't sit with the fact that somebody else would father my daughter because I gave up. Right?
That's
Listen,
good.
it gets hard. You just got to get harder. That's it.
Right.
Straight up.
Chris, the last word from you. Pull out.
Plan B. You horrible. That's all I'm gonna see. Now look at you now. That's all I'm gonna see.
You see now, you see, it's not all me now.
Tonight,
You know what I'm saying? Sometimes he just. I just open the door and let him just kick it wide open. But I'm raising someone else's son, and that's challenging. And so if you're a man and you find yourself in that situation, first of all, you got to love that kid, number one. The other thing I would say is I find myself sometimes playing peacemaker between
Mom and her.
mom and former dad, because I had a stepfather, and I gave my stepfather hell. You know what I'm saying? And now that I'm grown, I'm like, man, maybe that man ain't deserve it.
Right.
You know what I'm saying? And so I don't want to be a part of any spite or malice that occurs.
good.
And so my thing is always to, hey, look, we all gonna do this together as best as we can, and so in that way, our boy's gonna come out with the advantage because he'll have one mother who loves him to the moon and back, and he'll have two men in his life putting him on game from two different perspectives. You know, and that's one thing.
Oh, that's real. Yeah.
My dad, I love my dad to death. My parents were separated, but like y'all was saying, my dad I didn't have those come sit down. I see you do it with your boys all the time. And I see my father-in-law do it, where I didn't have a dad who was like, yo, come sit down. Let me show you how the world works.
Right.
Let me show you how the systems of the world interconnect. So I've been out here just bobbing and weaving, ducking, handling it all on my own.
Pull it out.
He won't let it go.
That's what you said it. You said it.
Hey, I said it. I can't even take it back. But that would be my word. Like, love your kids, man. Just
Right.
love your kids.
Right.
Do the best you can as a man. And if you need help, ask for it.
Wow. Well, again, Glenn and Stephen, it's always a pleasure to co-host with Chris. Listen, I hope you got something out of the podcast today, that especially for men, that you'll understand that there are men on this planet still today who are taking care of their children, and educate yourself on the information that's out there. The narrative is wrong. There's a motive behind it. There are good men, especially men of color, or doing their best to take care of their children. Listen, if this podcast has been a blessing to you, we need to hear from you. We also ask that you forward the podcast, tell somebody about it, send the link of it, and let them watch it, especially if you know there's a brother that's struggling, with his identity, struggling with the effort that he's making, but it seems as if society, people are putting the pressure on him. So I hope that you will forward the link to that person. And most importantly, I ask that you support what we're doing. We can't do this without you. So I ask that you go to our website, henryfernandez.org, and please donate today, and the Lord bless you. We'll see you next time on the next podcast. For right now, we're pulling out.
I knew it.